I'm Maya Sharma, 33, a freelance photographer and writer from Colorado. Our family's Thanksgiving tradition at the mountain cabin was everything to me. Bonfires, hiking trails, warm cider, and laughter that filled every corner of that wooden sanctuary. I invested my soul into every moment, believing it was the thread that wove our family together. But last September, my mother's words during our planning video call sliced through my hope like a razor. "Traditions evolve, Maya. Perhaps you should sit this one out," she said, her voice clinical and detached. Sit it out. They were inviting their book club friends and my sister's fiancé instead, as if my 2 decades of dedication meant nothing. My throat tightened, but I maintained composure and disconnected the call. That conversation became my turning point. I refused to plead for inclusion in my own family. I made a decision that sent shockwaves through everyone. When they discovered my choice, their messages flooded in, messages I deliberately ignored. What transpired afterward? It transformed everything. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Share your experience in the comments. Like and subscribe. You won't believe where this journey leads. Growing up in the foothills of Colorado, our mountain cabin represented my deepest sense of belonging. I'm Maya Sharma, and those formative years with our family of 4, my parents, my younger sister Priya, and me, felt absolutely magical. Our cabin, nestled among towering pines with a view of snow-capped peaks, was our private paradise. Every Thanksgiving, we'd converge for a tradition that defined our identity. The crisp mountain air buzzed with excitement as we prepared for a long weekend of bonfires, nature hikes, and decorating the cabin with autumn wreaths and fairy lights. It transcended being merely a holiday. It was our family's foundation. My mother, Anjali Sharma, orchestrated the culinary experience. She'd spend entire weeks planning elaborate menus: tandoori turkey, homemade naan, her legendary pumpkin curry that neighbors requested yearly, and traditional Indian desserts like gulab jamun. She'd hum classical Bollywood melodies, her hands expertly preparing spices while I observed in fascination, absorbing every technique. Dad, Rajesh Sharma, commanded the outdoor activities. A stoic architect with a passion for nature, he'd guide us on forest trails, teaching us to identify animal tracks and locate the perfect spots for wildlife photography. His distinctive laugh would echo through the trees when we'd spot a deer family, and he'd pat Priya's shoulder, proud of her natural ability to remain silent and patient. My contribution was unique and deeply personal. I became the cabin's creative soul, the person who made our sanctuary come alive. At age 11, I started stringing Edison bulbs along the porch, weaving them through pine branches until the entire structure glowed like something from a fairy tale. By 17, I was organizing elaborate scavenger hunts, teaching everyone nature photography, and keeping the atmosphere vibrant with carefully curated playlists and thoughtful decorations. I'd orchestrate every detail, from the ambient music to the hand-painted place. Cards, desperate for perfection. My sister, Priya Sharma, 3 years younger, was always the effortlessly charming one. She'd assist Dad with trail preparations or entertain neighbors with her quick wit and infectious energy. But she never invested herself as deeply as I did. When Priya relocated to Seattle for a tech position at age 24, our dynamic shifted fundamentally. She'd visit less frequently, call sporadically, her existence now intertwined with the West Coast and her fiancé, David Chen. I'd send her detailed messages asking about her attendance, but her responses were brief and distant. Swamped with deadlines, she'd reply, or maybe next time. Those years of separation were painful, but I convinced myself it was simply part of her maturation process. I clung fiercely to the cabin, to the tradition that represented home and continuity. Mom would still consult me about menu variations, and Dad would ask my opinion on new hiking trails. I believed we remained fundamentally unchanged. However, as I matured, fractures became visible. Mom and Dad would discuss Priya's career achievements, her modern apartment in Capitol Hill, her sophisticated life in Seattle, their voices resonating with unmistakable pride. My photography and freelance writing. They'd acknowledge it with polite nods, but their eyes never sparkled the same way. "It's unstable work," Mom commented once, her tone gentle yet cutting like a blade. "You need something more reliable." I dismissed their skepticism, channeling even more energy into the tradition to demonstrate my value and belonging. Throughout my late 20s, I became the tradition's guardian and architect. I'd arrive days early, transporting boxes of decorations, collaborating with Mom on increasingly elaborate menus, scouting new trails with Dad. The neighbors, families we'd known for generations, began joining regularly, their children adding chaos and joy I genuinely loved. It felt like we were creating something larger than ourselves. But Priya's absence grew increasingly conspicuous. She'd arrive for perhaps 12 hours, then depart early citing urgent work commitments. David started attending in her place, integrating into her role as though he'd always belonged. Initially, I didn't object. David was pleasant, appreciated my photography, engaged in conversations, but it felt like Priya was gradually disappearing from our family narrative. And Mom and Dad seemed completely unbothered by this transformation. I never missed a single Thanksgiving at the mountain cabin. For years, I abandoned everything to be present, even when it cost me professionally and personally. 3 Thanksgivings ago, I received an unexpected opportunity from National Geographic. They wanted me to join an assignment in Iceland, photographing the northern lights and documenting climate change's impact on glaciers. This was career-defining work, the type of assignment that could establish my reputation internationally. I was 30, struggling as a freelance photographer and writer, hustling for every assignment and paycheck. The Iceland opportunity was a dream materialized, but it coincided precisely with our family tradition weekend. I didn't even deliberate. I declined immediately, convincing myself the cabin was more important, more meaningful. Mom needed my help with preparations. Dad counted on me for the group hike I'd been planning. I couldn't disappoint them. Reflecting now, I question why I assumed they'd even notice my sacrifice or appreciate its magnitude. My work wasn't merely a hobby or casual pursuit. Several months before that fateful September call, I'd achieved something remarkable. A photo essay published in a prestigious photography journal, documenting Colorado's disappearing wildlife habitats. The project consumed months of pre-dawn shoots, countless rejected pitches, endless editing sessions, and significant financial investment in equipment. When the editor contacted me saying my work was being considered for their annual showcase, I felt like I'd finally achieved recognition. I had the 12-page spread professionally printed and framed, displaying it prominently in my studio apartment, rehearsing the moment I'd share this accomplishment with Mom and Dad. I envisioned Dad's rare, genuine smile, Mom's warm embrace, perhaps even a celebration at the cabin with everyone toasting my success. But when I mentioned it during a family dinner last spring, Mom simply nodded distractedly. "That's wonderful, Maya," she said, her attention already shifting to her tablet where she was browsing furniture for Priya's new apartment. Dad grunted dismissively. "Photography's unpredictable. Priya's tech salary, now that's security. She just got another promotion." My stomach twisted painfully, but I swallowed the rejection, changed the subject, and pretended their indifference didn't devastate me. Priya was perpetually the favored daughter. At 30, she had a corner office at a major tech company, a stunning waterfront apartment, a fiancé who perfectly fit their vision of success. Mom would enthusiastically discuss Priya's stock options, her upcoming wedding plans, how she was set for life. Dad would boast about Priya's achievements, her international business trips, as though my published work and artistic recognition were invisible. I'd listen silently, forcing smiles, hoping someday they'd see me with equal pride and respect. I wasn't envious. Priya worked incredibly hard, but the constant comparison was slowly destroying my self-worth. I'd dedicated years building a creative career I genuinely loved, taking risks they couldn't comprehend or value. Freelancing was brutal. Every assignment was competitive. Every income stream uncertain. Every month a financial tightrope. But I was talented, and I desperately needed them to acknowledge that reality. I compensated by intensifying my cabin contributions. Every Thanksgiving, I'd arrive with innovative ideas, better lighting installations, a photography workshop for everyone, guided meditation sessions at sunrise, elaborate nature-themed decorations I'd crafted myself. Last autumn, I spent weeks researching sustainable decorating materials, assuming Dad would appreciate the environmental consciousness. He barely glanced at them. "They're fine," he muttered, immediately returning to his architectural plans. Mom was too preoccupied texting Priya to notice my efforts, yet I persisted, convincing myself this was for our family, for preserving something meaningful. I'd message Priya asking if she'd contribute anything special this year, but she'd respond with single-word answers. Busy. I didn't push or create conflict. I assumed the planning call would unite us like always. As I folded my final sweater, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, genuine excitement untainted by obligation. Barcelona wasn't just a destination. It was my new beginning, my reclamation of identity and purpose. The plane descended into Barcelona on a brilliant morning. I stepped into the city, my breath catching at the sight of medieval streets bathed in golden Mediterranean light. My hotel, a charming boutique property in the Gothic Quarter, welcomed me with a room overlooking a quiet plaza with a centuries-old fountain. I dropped my luggage, feeling an overwhelming rush of possibility and freedom. For the first time in years, I wasn't organizing someone else's experience. This adventure was entirely mine. My first full day, I joined a professional photography workshop in a sunlit studio near Las Ramblas. The instructor, a weathered Catalan photographer named Santiago, taught us to capture Barcelona's unique light, his passionate explanations about composition and shadow bringing the craft alive in new ways. I laughed with strangers from around the world, my camera feeling like an extension of my soul, savoring the pure joy of learning without judgment. Later, I wandered into the Picasso Museum, standing transfixed before his blue period paintings, their melancholy beauty reflecting something within me that felt both broken and beautiful. Barcelona was vibrant and alive, and I was becoming part of its rhythm. At the photography workshop, I met Sophie Laurent, a freelance artist in her mid-40s with perceptive eyes and an easy warmth. Over coffee at a tiny cafe, we exchanged stories about our creative journeys. "I walked away from my family's expectations," she shared, stirring her cortado thoughtfully. "They wanted me to become a lawyer, take the safe path, live the conventional life. I chose art, moved to Lyon, and never looked back. It was terrifying and absolutely necessary." Her words resonated profoundly. I told her about the cabin, the traditions I'd desperately preserved, the call that finally broke me. "You're here now," Sophie said simply. "That's what matters. You're choosing yourself, defining your own path. That takes courage most people never find." I nodded, her story settling into me like a blueprint for my own transformation. I began exploring more intentionally, my camera documenting everything. I photographed street performers in Plaza Real, the intricate modernist facades along Passeig de Gràcia, golden hour light filtering through Gaudi's Sagrada Familia. I posted several images online, a candlelit tapas bar, a guitarist silhouetted against the Mediterranean sunset, not expecting much response, just wanting to capture and share these moments of freedom. Then my phone started buzzing insistently. Messages from Mom. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering?" Another from Priya. "Barcelona? Seriously? What's going on?" Even Dad sent a terse message. "Is everything all right?" I stared at the screen, their words attempting to pull me back into old patterns. They'd noticed my absence now, but only because I'd disappeared from their script. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I posted another photo. This one of myself smiling in front of Park Güell, Barcelona's mosaic-covered wonderland visible behind me, capturing my genuine happiness. Each day in Barcelona continued dismantling the weight I'd carried for years. I wandered through La Boqueria Market, tasting jamón ibérico and manchego cheese, allowing myself to linger without schedules or obligations. I sat in quiet cafes with my journal, ideas for photo essays flowing freely, my creativity unshackled. One afternoon, while photographing along Barcelona beach, I experienced a revelation. I wasn't just the daughter who created atmosphere or organized activities. I was Maya, a photographer, a storyteller, someone capable of building a meaningful life on her own terms. The persistent need for mom's embrace or dad's approval, the sting of Priya's preferential treatment, these feelings still existed, nestled somewhere deep inside. But they no longer defined my worth or limited my possibilities. The following evening, Sophie invited me to an international artists' gathering. We sat in a bustling bodega, exchanging creative visions and dreams over wine and patatas bravas. "You have something special," she told me, raising her glass. "Don't let anyone diminish your light. Not family, not society, not self-doubt." Her words accompanied me as I walked back to my hotel, the city glowing with life around me. Barcelona had offered me more than a vacation or escape. It had revealed my own resilience and potential. I wasn't running from my family. I was stepping fully into myself, claiming the identity I'd always possessed but never fully embraced. On Thanksgiving evening, I received a video call from Dad. I was in my Barcelona hotel room sipping Spanish wine, the city's distant fireworks creating a magical backdrop through my window. His face appeared on my laptop screen, Mom beside him, Priya and David visible in the background at the cabin I'd always cherished. "Maya," Dad began, his voice gruff with discomfort. "We saw your photographs. Why didn't you tell us about Barcelona?" I set my glass down deliberately, my pulse quickening. I'd been unconsciously preparing for this moment, not to explain, but to finally speak my unfiltered truth. "I didn't think you'd care," I said, my tone steady and clear. "You made it explicitly clear I wasn't needed this year. You chose Priya, David, your friends, everyone except me." Mom's eyes widened slightly, but I continued without pause. "I've spent years maintaining our traditions, investing my time, money, and emotional energy. But you've always favored Priya, her job, her life, her achievements. It's all you discuss with any genuine enthusiasm. When have you ever truly noticed mine? When have my accomplishments mattered equally?" Dad shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tight. "We didn't mean it that way," he said defensively. "We simply thought you'd be fine independently. You've always been so self-sufficient and capable." His words felt like deflection, not genuine apology or accountability. Mom interjected, her voice sharp. "Maya, you're being overly sensitive and dramatic. It's just 1 year." "We didn't exile you?" I laughed, a bitter edge entering my voice. "You told me to skip it. You invited David, who isn't even officially family yet, and preserved Priya's place without question. How is that not exclusion?" David looked away, visibly uncomfortable. Priya cleared her throat, surprising me. "She's right," she said quietly. "I've felt it too, just differently. You put me on this pedestal I never asked for. The pressure is suffocating. I didn't request that treatment or want Maya to feel less valued." Dad's face hardened defensively, but Mom's eyes darted between us, clearly unsettled by this united front. I took a deep breath, years of suppressed feelings finally surfacing. "I sacrificed so much for you," I said, my voice trembling with emotion but remaining clear. "Career opportunities, financial stability, my own dreams and aspirations, all to keep our family together, to maintain traditions you now dismiss casually. And you've consistently dismissed everything I've achieved. I'm finished accepting that treatment." Dad attempted to interrupt, but I cut him off firmly. "I'm not returning to the cabin. Not this year. Not ever under these conditions. I need to build a life where I'm valued and seen." Mom gasped audibly. "Maya, you can't mean that. You're just upset and emotional." But I absolutely meant it. I disconnected the call, the screen going black. My hands shook slightly, but I felt dramatically lighter, like I'd finally released a burden I'd carried far too long. Back in Colorado, I settled into my apartment with Barcelona still alive in my consciousness and heart. My phone buzzed constantly with messages, Mom's lengthy apologies, Dad's awkward attempts at reconciliation, even Priya asking to talk and process everything together. I ignored most of them initially. I wasn't consumed by anger anymore. I simply didn't need their validation to feel complete or worthy. I immersed myself in work, pitching ambitious new photo essays, meeting deadlines with renewed creativity and focus. Thomas, my editor, assigned me a major feature on Colorado's endangered ecosystems, praising my innovative vision and dedication. Jessica and I met regularly for coffee, laughing about shared memories and planning future adventures together. My life felt authentically full, not because of my family's approval, but because I'd chosen to value myself. Months later, I heard through a mutual neighbor that the cabin gathering had collapsed. Dad and Mom attempted to maintain the tradition, but without my organizational energy and creative vision, it felt hollow and forced. Priya didn't attend the following year, telling them she needed space to figure out her own relationship with family expectations. Mom called her selfish. Dad stopped discussing traditions entirely, the subject becoming painfully loaded. Their regret was evident, but the damage was irreparable. They'd built a family structure on uneven ground, showing clear favoritism, and it crumbled when both daughters stopped supporting that imbalanced system. I didn't gloat or feel vindicated. It simply confirmed I'd made the right choice for my well-being and future. Looking back now, I've learned something vital and transformative. My worth isn't determined by a family that doesn't see me clearly. I spent years desperately chasing their approval, believing it would make me whole and complete. But Barcelona showed me I could define my own value through my work, my choices, my authentic life. This particular time, I was prepared to finally shine and be seen. My photo essay had just been featured in the journal, and the response was overwhelming. Photographers I admired were reaching out, readers sending thoughtful messages, colleagues sharing it across social media platforms. I spent days preparing my announcement, rehearsing exactly how I'd tell Mom and Dad about this significant achievement. I even created note cards, wanting to articulate everything perfectly. I imagined them truly listening for once, perhaps asking to see the full essay, maybe displaying genuine interest in my creative process. I visualized myself at the cabin, sharing stories by the fireplace, everyone raising glasses to celebrate my success. This wasn't about ego or bragging. I simply wanted them to be proud, to see me as more than the daughter who arranged decorations and organized activities. I didn't anticipate the call would be so fundamentally different. I didn't expect it would shatter something irreparable inside me. By late September, I was positioned at my desk, fully prepared for our Thanksgiving planning video call. My notes were organized, my recent success energizing my confidence. I'd practiced my announcement repeatedly, imagining Mom's warm smile, Dad's approving nod, perhaps even Priya offering a rare compliment. The video window opened, revealing their faces, Mom sipping chai, Dad leaning back in his leather chair, Priya distracted with David visible beside her. I took a deep breath, ready to finally receive recognition. "Hey everyone," I began, my voice bright with anticipation. "I have incredible news to share. My photo essay was featured in the photography journal, and it's receiving amazing feedback from the professional community. The editor said it's one of their strongest pieces this year." I waited, expecting enthusiasm or at least acknowledgement. Mom glanced up briefly. "Oh, that's nice, sweetie," she said, immediately returning to her phone. Dad nodded mechanically, his attention fixed on documents spread before him. Priya muttered, "Cool," barely making eye contact. My heart sank, but I pushed forward, transitioning to cabin planning. "So, regarding this year's Thanksgiving menu, I was thinking we could experiment with some fusion dishes, maybe incorporate more traditional Indian flavors with the turkey. And I've discovered these solar-powered lanterns that would be perfect for the evening hikes." Dad interrupted abruptly. "Actually, Maya," he said, his tone emotionless and matter-of-fact, "we're modifying our plans this year. We're inviting the Hendersons, the Patels, and David Chen. You should probably skip this year's gathering." The words struck like physical violence. "Skip it!" I stared at my screen, frozen on his impassive face. "Wait, what?" I managed, my voice constricted. You're saying I'm not invited? I'm not coming to our family tradition? It's not dramatic, Dad said, shrugging dismissively. Traditions are primarily for us as parents now. You're young and independent. You have your own life to build. Mom nodded in agreement, adding, We simply thought it would be refreshing to include our friends this time. David's very excited about experiencing the cabin. David smiled awkwardly, oblivious to the devastation unfolding, while Priya shifted uncomfortably but remained silent. I stared at them, my chest constricting painfully. So Priya's attending, correct? I asked, already knowing the answer but needing confirmation. Dad didn't hesitate. Of course. She's family, and David's essentially family now too. The room tilted. Priya was family, but somehow I wasn't. I'd invested years planning, decorating, maintaining the cabin's magic, and now I was disposable. I wanted to scream, to demand explanations for why they valued Priya's minimal presence over my decades of dedication. Instead, I clenched my jaw, forcing a tight smile. Okay, I said, my voice steady despite the internal devastation. I understand. I'll sit this one out. Mom looked relieved. It's just 1 year, Maya. Don't overthink it or take it personally. Priya glanced at me, her eyes flickering with something, guilt perhaps, or recognition of the injustice, but she remained silent, complicit in their decision. I disconnected from the call, my screen going dark. Alone in my apartment, I sat motionless, replaying Dad's words. Traditions are for us parents. She's family. Each phrase cut deeper, slicing through years of effort and devotion. I thought about every Thanksgiving I'd poured my heart into, every time I'd prioritized them over personal dreams and professional opportunities. And for what? To be replaced by their social circle and someone who'd known the family for mere months? David wasn't even legally family yet, but he received an invitation over me. Priya, who barely participated anymore, remained their priority. I wasn't angry at Priya or even David. My fury was directed at Mom and Dad for making me feel fundamentally unwelcome and unvalued. I opened my laptop again, staring at the photo essay I'd been so proud of. The images blurred as tears threatened. What was my identity to them? The daughter who created ambiance, who organized activities, who preserved their tradition with passionate dedication? Or simply someone they could discard when convenient? I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. I refused to beg for inclusion. I refused to cry and validate their dismissal. But I knew one absolute truth. I wasn't the same Maya who'd joined that call. Something fundamental had shifted, and there was no returning to who I'd been. After disconnecting, I sat stunned in my compact apartment. The silence felt suffocating, Dad's words echoing relentlessly. I needed someone to help me process this betrayal. I called Jessica Martinez, my closest friend since college, who always provided honest perspective and unwavering support. They told me to skip Thanksgiving, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. They invited Priya, David, even their friends, but not me. Jessica didn't hesitate. Maya, you've sacrificed everything for them. When was the last time you prioritized your own happiness and dreams? Her words resonated deeply. She was absolutely right. I'd spent years placing their tradition first, perpetually hoping for validation that never materialized. Forget the cabin, she said firmly. Go somewhere that makes you feel alive and valued. That night, sleep eluded me. Jessica's advice shunhuan through my consciousness. I opened my laptop, browsing travel websites, my heart racing with possibility. Barcelona. I'd always dreamed of experiencing it. The architecture, the art, the vibrant culture, the creative energy, but it wasn't financially practical. My savings, $18,000 accumulated from countless freelance assignments, was designated for emergencies and equipment upgrades, not spontaneous adventures. Still, the thought of remaining in Colorado, pretending everything was acceptable, made me feel claustrophobic and trapped. I needed this. I needed to choose myself for once. The following morning, I contacted Elena Rodriguez, a travel consultant I'd interviewed for a travel magazine article last year. I want to go to Barcelona. I told her, my voice firm despite underlying nervousness. For Thanksgiving week. Can you arrange it? Elena didn't question my decision. Give me 24 hours, she said, her enthusiasm contagious and validating. By the next evening, she emailed a comprehensive itinerary. 10 days in Barcelona, a boutique hotel in the Gothic Quarter, round-trip flights, a flamenco show, a Gaudi architecture tour, and a professional photography workshop. The total, just over $18,000, consuming my entire savings. I stared at the number, my financial security flashing before my eyes. It was reckless and impulsive, but it felt profoundly right. I authorized the payment, my hands shaking as I confirmed. This wasn't merely a trip. It was a declaration of independence and self-worth. Packing became a blur of activity. I gathered my warmest clothes for Barcelona's November weather, comfortable layers, a stylish jacket, scarves for the Mediterranean breeze. I included several photography books I'd been meaning to study, and my professional camera equipment. I wanted to document every transformative moment. As I zipped my suitcase, contradictory emotions washed over me. Liberation mixed with fear. I was breaking away, prioritizing my own needs for once. But what if this was a mistake? What if I returned to the same emotional emptiness? I pushed those doubts aside forcefully. This was my opportunity to rewrite my narrative. I still needed to arrange time off from my freelance commitments. I emailed Thomas Bennett, my primary editor at the photography magazine, requesting 2 weeks off. I anticipated resistance. Freelancers rarely get genuine vacations without financial consequences. But Thomas replied within hours. Maya, your recent work has been exceptional, he wrote. You've more than earned this. Go enjoy Barcelona. We'll be here when you return. His simple words felt like the professional validation I desperately craved from my family. Someone recognized my work, my dedication, my value as a creative professional. It was enough to silence my remaining hesitations. By early October, everything was confirmed. My flight was scheduled for the week before Thanksgiving. My hotel was reserved, my itinerary packed with experiences, museum visits, architectural tours, tapas crawls through historic neighborhoods, a sunset photography session at Park Güell. I didn't inform Mom or Dad. Priya sent one brief text asking if I was okay, but I left it unread. I wasn't prepared to explain or justify my decision. Not to her, not to anyone. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't planning for them or seeking their approval. I was planning exclusively for myself. I'm not claiming family doesn't matter. It does, deeply. But when their love comes with conditions, comparisons, and conditional acceptance, it's not genuine love. It's obligation and expectation. I chose myself, and I'd make that choice again without hesitation. 6 months after Barcelona, something unexpected happened. Priya reached out, not with excuses, but with genuine vulnerability. We met at a neutral cafe in Denver, and for the first time in years, we talked honestly. She admitted she'd felt trapped by their expectations too, suffocated by being the successful one. We both recognized how Mom and Dad had pitted us against each other unconsciously, creating a dynamic where neither of us could truly win. We didn't fix everything in one conversation, but we began rebuilding our relationship on honest terms, separate from our parents' narrative. Mom and Dad eventually reached out more genuinely, acknowledging they'd made mistakes. The conversations were difficult and imperfect. I didn't immediately forgive everything, but I created boundaries that protected my peace. I'd visit occasionally, but the cabin tradition in its old form was finished. I'd built new traditions, photography trips with Jessica, annual solo adventures to new cities, creative retreats with Sophie and other artists I'd met. My career flourished. The ecosystem photo essay won a regional award. National Geographic reached out about future collaborations. I started teaching photography workshops, sharing my passion with others who felt unseen in their own lives. To everyone who's followed this journey, thank you for staying with me. Your time and attention mean everything. Have you ever had to walk away from family to discover yourself? Have you chosen your own path despite pressure to conform? Share your thoughts below. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about choosing yourself, finding your voice, and building a life that honors who you truly are.